Hello, my name is Ali, and I love learning new languages. Since I was a child, I have always wanted to speak English fluently. English is an important language because people all over the world use it to communicate. It helps in education, business, and travel. I wanted to improve my English so I could have better job opportunities and talk to people from different countries. I chose to go to America to learn English because it is an English-speaking country. In America, I could practice English every day with native speakers. I could also learn about American culture, meet new people, and visit famous places. Many of my friends told me that studying English in America would help me learn faster. I was very excited about this opportunity. Before my trip, I felt many emotions. I was happy because I was going to a new country. I was also a little nervous because I had never traveled so far from home. I worried about speaking English with native speakers. What if they spoke too fast? What if I didn't understand them? But I told myself, this is a great chance to learn. I will try my best. I packed my bags with everything I needed: clothes, my English books, a small dictionary, and some gifts for my new friends. My family was very proud of me. They told me to work hard and enjoy my time in America. I said goodbye to them, took a deep breath, and got ready for my big adventure. Preparing for my trip to America was a long and exciting process. I had never traveled outside my country before, so everything was new for me. The first and most important step was getting my visa. I had to collect many documents, including my passport, bank statements, and a letter from the English school in America. I also had to fill out application forms and schedule an interview at the U.S. Embassy. On the day of my visa interview, I was very nervous. I had read online that some people do not get their visas, and I was afraid that I might be one of them. When I entered the embassy, I saw many people waiting for their turn. After some time, an officer called my name. He asked me why I wanted to go to America, where I would stay, and how long I planned to stay. I answered all the questions honestly and confidently. After a few minutes, the officer smiled and said, "Your visa is approved." I felt so happy and relieved. I thanked him and walked out with a big smile on my face. With my visa in hand, the next step was packing my bags. I made a list of everything I needed to take with me. Since I was going to stay in America for several months, I had to pack carefully. First, I packed my clothes. I checked the weather in America and saw that it would be colder than my country, so I packed warm jackets, sweaters, and scarves. I also packed comfortable shoes because I knew I would be walking a lot. Next, I packed my study materials. Since my main goal was to improve my English, I took my English grammar books, a small notebook, and a pocket dictionary. I also downloaded some English learning apps on my phone to help me practice on the plane. Besides clothes and books, I packed some important personal items. I took my toothbrush, shampoo, and other toiletries. I also packed my phone charger, some snacks from my country, and a few photos of my family. I wanted to have something to remind me of home whenever I felt homesick. Saying goodbye to my family was the hardest part. My parents, siblings, and friends were all excited for me, but they also felt a little sad. The night before my flight, my mother cooked my favorite meal, and we all sat together, talking about my trip. My father gave me some advice. Be careful, study hard, and don't forget to call us often. My younger brother hugged me and said, "I will miss you." At the airport, my family came to see me off. My mother's eyes were full of tears, but she smiled and told me to enjoy my journey. I hugged everyone one last time and walked toward the security check. As I stood in line, I looked back and saw my family waving at me. I waved back and took a deep breath. My adventure was about to begin. As I walked through the airport security check, my heart was beating fast. This was my first time traveling alone, and I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. I found my seat on the plane, put my bag in the overhead compartment, and sat down. The flight was long, more than 12 hours. At first, I looked out the window, watching the airport get smaller as the plane took off. Then I tried to sleep, but it was difficult because I kept thinking about my new life in America. During the flight, I had my first real test of English. A flight attendant came to me and asked, "Would you like chicken or pasta?" At first, I didn't understand her question because she spoke very fast. I looked at her for a moment, feeling nervous. Then, I took a deep breath and asked her to repeat. She smiled and spoke more slowly. "Would you like chicken or pasta?" I smiled back and said, "Chicken, please." This small conversation made me realize that I had a lot to learn, but it also gave me confidence. Finally, after many hours in the air, the pilot announced that we were about to land in America. I looked out of the window and saw a huge city below me. My heart started racing with excitement. The plane touched down smoothly, and the passengers clapped. I was finally in America. As soon as I stepped off the plane, I noticed many differences from my home country. The airport was huge, with people from all over the world speaking different languages. I followed the signs to passport control, where I had to show my visa and answer a few questions from the immigration officer. He asked, "What is the purpose of your visit?" I confidently replied, "I am here to study English." After checking my documents, he stamped my passport and said, "Welcome to America." I smiled and thanked him. After collecting my luggage, I walked toward the exit. I had arranged to stay with a host family, and they were waiting for me outside the airport. I was holding a piece of paper with their names, and I looked around for them. Suddenly, I saw a woman holding a sign with my name on it. She smiled warmly and waved at me. "Hello, welcome to America," she said. Her name was Sarah, and she was my host mother. She helped me with my bags, and we walked to her car. On the way, she talked to me, asking how my flight was. I understood some of what she said, but not everything. When I didn't understand, I smiled and nodded. She noticed this and said, "Don't worry, you will learn quickly." As we drove through the city, I looked around in amazement. The roads were big, the buildings were tall, and there were bright lights everywhere. Everything looked just like the movies I had watched. After about 30 minutes, we arrived at my new home. It was a beautiful house with a small garden in front. Sarah introduced me to her husband, John, and their 2 children. They were very kind and welcomed me warmly. My room was small but comfortable. It had a bed, a desk, and a big window that let in lots of sunlight. I placed my suitcase on the floor and sat on the bed. I felt happy, but also a little tired. Traveling so far from home was a big step, and everything was new to me. That night, we had dinner together. Sarah cooked a delicious meal, and we talked about different things. I tried my best to speak English, and they were very patient with me. They spoke slowly and helped me with new words. After dinner, I went to my room, changed into my pajamas, and lay down on my bed. I thought about my journey, my new family, and my English classes that would start soon. I felt proud of myself for coming this far. As I closed my eyes, I whispered, "This is just the beginning." And with that thought, I drifted off to sleep, ready for my new adventure. The next morning, I woke up early, feeling both excited and nervous. It was my first day at the English school, and I didn't know what to expect. I got dressed quickly and went downstairs for breakfast. My host mother, Sarah, was already in the kitchen preparing food. She smiled at me and said, "Good morning. Are you ready for your first day?" I nodded and smiled back, but inside, I was a little worried. After breakfast, Sarah drove me to the language school. On the way, I looked out the window and saw many people walking on the streets, cars moving fast, and tall buildings everywhere. Everything felt so different from my home country. My heart started beating faster as we got closer to the school. What if I didn't understand the teacher? What if I made mistakes while speaking? So many thoughts ran through my mind. Finally, we arrived at the school. It was a big building with many classrooms and students from different countries. Sarah wished me good luck, and I stepped inside. At the entrance, I saw a big sign that said, "Welcome to the International English Academy." I took a deep breath and walked to the reception desk, where a friendly woman greeted me. "Hello? What's your name?" she asked. "My name is Allie," I said. "Nice to meet you, Allie. Here is your student ID and class schedule. Your first class is in room 205, she said with a smile. I thanked her and walked through the hallways, looking for my classroom. As I entered room 205, I saw other students sitting at their desks, chatting in different languages. Some were from China, some from Brazil, and others from different parts of the world. It was amazing to see so many people from different cultures all here to learn English. The teacher walked in and introduced herself. "Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa, and I will be your English teacher." She spoke clearly and slowly, which helped me understand. "Let's start by introducing ourselves," she continued. One by one, the students stood up and said their names and where they were from. When it was my turn, I stood up and said, "Hello, my name is Ali. I am from Pakistan, and I want to learn English to communicate with people around the world." The teacher smiled and said, "Great, Ali. Welcome to the class." After introductions, we started our first lesson. Lisa wrote some common English phrases on the board, such as, "How are you?" and "Nice to meet you." She asked us to practice them with a partner. I turned to the student next to me, a friendly guy named Carlos from Brazil. "Hello, how are you?" I asked. "I am good. Nice to meet you," he replied. We both laughed because our pronunciation was not perfect, but it was fun to practice. We continued learning new words and sentences, and Lisa encouraged us to speak as much as possible. During the break, I went to the cafeteria to buy a sandwich. This was my first time ordering food in English, and I was nervous. The cashier looked at me and said, "What would you like?" I panicked for a moment because she spoke very fast. I looked at the menu and pointed at a sandwich. "That one, please," I said. She smiled and asked, "Do you want a drink with that?" I didn't understand her at first, so I asked, "Can you say that again, please?" She repeated slowly, "Do you want a drink with your sandwich?" This time I understood and said, "Yes, a bottle of water, please." She handed me my food, and I felt so happy. It was a small conversation, but it made me realize that I could communicate in English if I listened carefully and took my time. The rest of the day went well. We learned more English phrases, played some fun language games, and even watched a short video in English. At the end of the class, Lisa gave us some homework. We had to write a short paragraph about our first day. As I walked home, I felt proud of myself. I had survived my first day of English school. Yes, there were challenges, but I also met new friends and learned new words. I knew that with time and practice, I would become more confident in speaking English. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote in my notebook. Today was my first day in English class. I met new friends and learned many new words. Sometimes, English is difficult, but I will keep practicing. I am excited for tomorrow. I smiled as I closed my notebook, feeling hopeful for the days ahead. After my first few days in America, I slowly started to settle into my new routine. Every morning, I woke up early, got ready, and had breakfast with my host family. Sarah, my host mother, always spoke to me in English, which helped me improve my listening skills. Sometimes she would ask me simple questions like, "How did you sleep?" or "What are your plans for today?" At first, I struggled to find the right words, but she was very patient and always encouraged me. After breakfast, I took the bus to my English school. Taking the bus was an interesting experience because I had to ask for the right ticket and listen carefully to the driver's announcements. One day, I got on the wrong bus and ended up in a different part of the city. I was a little scared, but I used my English skills to ask for help. I went up to a woman at the bus stop and said, "Excuse me, how can I go to the International English Academy?" She smiled and explained the way. I thanked her and finally made it to school. It was a small mistake, but I learned an important lesson. Always check the bus number before getting on. At school, we had different activities to practice speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Our teacher, Lisa, often made us work in pairs or small groups. One day, we played a game where we had to describe an object without saying its name. I had to describe a telephone, so I said, "It is something you use to call people." My classmates guessed correctly, and we all laughed. Outside of school, I practiced English in many real-life situations. When I went to restaurants, I had to order food in English. At first, I was nervous, but after a few times, it became easier. I learned how to say, "Can I have a cheeseburger and a soda, please?" Or, "I would like a coffee with milk." The waiters were always friendly and happy to help if I didn't understand something. Going to the supermarket was another challenge. There were so many different products, and I had to read the labels carefully. One day, I wanted to buy sugar, but I accidentally picked up a bag of salt. When I got home and tasted my tea, it was terrible. My host mother laughed and taught me how to read food labels properly. Making friends in America was one of the best parts of my journey. I met people from different countries who were also learning English. In my class, I became good friends with Carlos from Brazil, May from China, and Ahmed from Egypt. After school, we often went to a nearby cafe to practice speaking English together. We made a rule. We could only speak English, even if we made mistakes. It was funny because sometimes we used the wrong words, but we helped each other and improved every day. One weekend, our school organized a trip to a famous park. We took a long walk, enjoyed the fresh air, and played games. At lunchtime, we all brought food from our home countries and shared it. I let my friends taste some traditional Pakistani food, and they loved it. Carlos shared Brazilian snacks, and May brought Chinese dumplings. It was a wonderful experience because we not only practiced English, but also learned about each other's cultures. One of the most exciting experiences was visiting a famous place in America. One weekend, my host family took me to see the Statue of Liberty. I had seen pictures of it before, but seeing it in real life was amazing. We took a ferry to Liberty Island, and I was surprised by how big the statue was. My host father, John, told me about its history and how it represents freedom. While exploring the island, I met a group of tourists from France. They were also learning English, so we decided to practice together. We talked about our countries, our favorite foods, and why we were visiting America. It was a fun and memorable experience because I realized that English connects people from all over the world. One of the funniest moments happened when I went to a coffee shop alone. I wanted to order a large coffee, but instead I accidentally said, "Big coffee." The cashier smiled and said, "Do you mean a large coffee?" I laughed and said, "Yes, large coffee, please." It was a small mistake, but it taught me how to use the correct words when ordering drinks. Another time, I went to a bookstore to buy an English novel. I asked the shop assistant, "Do you have a book about a big magic school?" She smiled and said, "Do you mean Harry Potter?" I laughed because that was exactly what I wanted. Moments like these made learning English fun and exciting. After a few weeks in America, I noticed a big improvement in my English. I was no longer afraid to start conversations, and I felt more comfortable ordering food, asking for directions, and making small talk with strangers. Every day, I learned new words and phrases, and I felt proud of my progress. One evening, my host mother told me, "Ali, your English is getting much better. You are more confident now." Hearing that made me so happy because it showed that all my hard work was paying off. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about everything I had experienced so far, taking the wrong bus, making new friends, visiting famous places, and learning from my mistakes. My journey in America was not just about learning English, it was about growing as a person and gaining confidence in myself. I smiled and whispered to myself, "I can do this." And with that thought, I drifted off to sleep, ready for another exciting day in America. Even though I was enjoying my time in America, learning English was not always easy. One of the biggest challenges I faced was understanding different accents. In class, my teacher spoke slowly and clearly, but outside of school, people spoke very fast. Sometimes, when I went to a restaurant or a store, I could not understand what the cashier or waiter was saying. They would ask me questions like, "For here or to go?" or "Would you like a receipt?" And I would just smile nervously because I wasn't sure what they meant. I also struggled with speaking confidently. In my mind, I knew what I wanted to say, but when I tried to speak, I felt shy and afraid of making mistakes. I often worried that people would laugh at me if I pronounced a word incorrectly. Because of this, I sometimes stayed quiet in conversations, even when I wanted to join in. But I didn't give up. I found ways to improve. One thing that helped me a lot was watching English TV shows with subtitles. I started watching simple programs where people spoke slowly. I listened carefully to how they pronounced words and repeated them to myself. Over time, I became more familiar with the way native speakers talked. Another thing that helped was practicing English every day with my friends. Carlos, May, and Ahmed also had the same challenges, so we supported each other. We played a game where we had to speak only in English for an hour. If someone spoke in their native language, They had to do a funny challenge, like singing a song in English. This game helped us relax and have fun while learning. I also started keeping a small notebook where I wrote down new words and phrases I learned each day. Whenever I heard a new word, I would ask my teacher or my host family what it meant and write it down. Then, I would try to use it in a sentence the next day. One day, something amazing happened. I was at a cafe, and an American man started a conversation with me. Instead of feeling nervous, I smiled and answered confidently. We talked about the weather, my experience in America, and my English classes. At that moment, I realized how much I had improved. I was no longer afraid to speak, and I could understand the conversation without asking him to repeat every sentence. I felt proud of myself. Learning English was difficult, but I had come a long way. Looking back at my journey, I realized that learning English was not just about studying grammar and vocabulary. It was about experiencing new things, making mistakes, learning from them, and never giving up. At the beginning of my trip, I was nervous and shy. I struggled to understand people and felt afraid to speak. But with time, patience, and practice, I became more confident. I learned that making mistakes is a natural part of learning, and every mistake helped me improve. My English had improved in so many ways. I could have conversations without fear, I understood different accents better, and I could express my thoughts more clearly. Most importantly, I gained the confidence to use English in real-life situations. As my trip came to an end, I felt a little sad to leave America, but I was also excited to continue my English learning journey. I knew that this was just the beginning. To anyone learning English, I want to say this. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Speak as much as possible, listen carefully, and practice every day. Learning a language takes time, but if you keep going, you will improve. I smiled as I boarded my flight home, thinking about everything I had experienced. My trip to America had changed my life, and I was grateful for every lesson I had learned. The journey of learning English never truly ends. It only gets better.